what you did, you little jerk.
What's going on, jerk faces? Here, it's the Ombudsman Hour at the Circle of Jerks podcast. As always, we have our faithful Andy. How's it going, Andy?
What up?
You have me, your great host, Robert. How's it going, everybody? Woo. And we have a returning guest. Some would say the lesser half of Nam Fam Bam.
The forgotten half.
Yeah. But we still love him anyways.
Yeah.
We have Eric Nam. How are you doing today, buddy?
Good.
Yeah, and it's been a while since
since
I
last
think
episode.
I haven't seen
When
you
was
since
that?
That was
It aired in November, right?
Yeah, so it was like probably in October or.
Oh my god, so like
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah, so it's
More
been
than
a while.
6 months, yeah. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah,
I'm
of
super
course.
excited.
No, yeah,
I've
you
been waiting
guys,
for this
you
day
guys
for a
were the
long
longest podcast.
Were we?
Yeah, you were the longest podcast.
Okay.
And then we did.
Who beat us?
We kind of did because
the episode that you missed.
yeah, the April Fool's joke, the April Fool's episode where we talked about
Beauty
these
secrets.
Beauty secrets. I had a lot to contribute. You could have called me.
I know, but I think we did too good of a job of tricking people because it worked on you.
I was like, I'm gonna skip this one. I'll put this on the back burner.
The people that commented, I don't think they watched it. they just saw like the title card. It's like, you go girls, or something.
Oh yeah, on our Instagram page, I put up the thumbnail as I normally do to kind of advertise the.
I saw that. I remember.
Yeah,
I was like,
you're like, oh, skip on that.
I'm gonna put this
That's
on
a hard
back of the line.
Yeah, end of the queue.
Yeah, end of the queue. Exactly.
Yeah, it was hilarious because like a lot of like beauty brands or like or beauty Instagrammers or whatever, they're like, I was like, yes, this is so much, yes.
Yes, queen.
That's so funny.
It's funny because it did work on my cousin's wife because I guess the person that I used for the thumbnail is a pretty well-known male beauty blogger, and she's like, oh wow, you got that guy on? And so she clicked on it, and it's like, this is not what I signed up for.
Conspiracy theories.
April Fools. Oh, it was great. I'm so happy that we did that.
It was April Fools.
Yeah.
I know. I try to make it so like people wouldn't think that was a legit one.
Yeah.
So I still made it look legit, but then I put like little tiny things like. Well, the one big thing is the episode number. It was like 211.
Oh, I didn't realize.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know like how exactly I would have gone about doing that because I didn't want to jump and be like and do like 41 or something to indicate April Fools or whatever. But I wanted to make it a little suspicious, so I put 200 because the last one was 21, and so I just put another one in.
That's funny.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it fooled people. That's good.
So it fooled people
on many different levels.
Many levels.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, one kept away, one was like instantly drawn.
Well, I think today we have a very interesting topic, as we always do on this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
We heard Andy and I heard a question that got us thinking, and I think initially when you hear it too, you'll think like, yeah, that's crazy.
Well, less of a question as opposed to a declarative statement.
Well, okay, yes, it was a declarative statement by this person, but I'm going to pose it as a question. And is Chinatown better than The Godfather? And of course, many of you are scoffing in your in your computers.
Yeah, it's like, what is this?
Yeah, but let's pump the brakes a bit, and why don't we break it down a little bit? So we all three of us back to back watched Chinatown and The Godfather, and so we're gonna kind of break it down a little bit and see what we think concerning that. And to start us off, Andy, why don't you, for those of you who haven't watched these films but have heard about them or maybe haven't watched them in a while, Andy's going to give you a little bit of synopsis of the film. So why don't you break it down for us, Andy?
Okay, well, I mean, Godfather, everyone should know Godfather. It's a story of Michael Corleone and his ascension to power within, one of the five families. And so, I think, if you don't like Godfather, then, something's wrong with you because it's,
seriously,
it's one of those stories that, it kind of talks about like the heart of man and like
even if you don't like mob films, I think you can still enjoy
the
It's beyond the mob film.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely like even like the mob motif is just like the background. You know, it's really about like people and what they're willing to do to secure their secure their positions, to protect their families, to make sure that essentially. I think one of the dictums is for this movie could be like using violence to ensure peace. Because ultimately, the Corleone family, the main family, they just want to be left alone. Because like even in that initial meeting that Vito Corleone takes with Sollozzo, right? He basically just wants to keep things as they are, but especially for
quid pro quo
for his side. When Sollozzo is asking for, hey, I want to come into your with respect, come into your territory and sell drugs. Yeah, but then Vito. Corleone's he's like, no, drugs are messy. They just lead to no good. So I'm gonna respectfully say decline.
Right.
Which then leads into mob warfare, and then Michael, having to step up. And so, we could do an entire podcast and then some about this movie.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it before you got here about like kind of our thoughts on these movies, and we had probably about 40 minutes about it.
We should be recording this, or we can just talk about beauty secrets.
Yeah, beauty secrets. I know, right? I don't have like this porcelain skin, from nothing.
Yeah,
it does take work.
We're perfectly manicuring beards.
That beard is looking good, though. I gotta say.
Thank you. Okay, it's funny because like no woman in my family likes my beard.
No one in my family either.
I know. Yeah. Everyone else, like everyone outside of my family, loves it. Everyone.
I think Sarah's just given up. She's like, all right, it's been 10 years.
I'll deal with it. I guess I love you.
It's like, I guess. I know. It's like it looks at her and deal's a deal.
Yeah. But yeah. I think you're right. I think it's more about the human condition, human nature. I think the elements of it, like you said, it's not just a mobster movie. Kind of in the same way that Game of Thrones is not just about a medieval dragon,
right? Dragon queen.
Yeah, it has kind of the same elements, like you were saying about the necessity of violence to keep peace, the struggle of power, the ascension in that power struggle,
right? And
that's kind of similar. It reminds me of why I got into Game of Thrones. It took me forever because I was like, I hate fantasy stuff. I hate dragons. I'm not into it. And then I watched like a couple episodes. I'm like, oh,
it hooks you.
I'm like, oh, dude, this is.
It's funny because everyone tells me
that's how The Walking Dead got me too. Because I don't.
I don't like horror and
exactly.
Everyone and I know has been telling me you'd love this movie or you'd love this show, but I have not watched it.
Oh, you haven't watched it yet?
I haven't watched it yet.
We'll come back for that.
Yeah, we'll come back. Yeah.
You're an insane man, but that's okay.
But yeah, Godfather. Anyway.
Godfather. Yeah. So Godfather up against Chinatown, which is kind of it's loosely based on history. I mean, Godfather's kind of loosely based on history as well.
Yeah.
But it's it deals more with I think systems of systems and systems of corruption, because you have the main character Jake Gittes, who's this private investigator, and he's tasked to find dirt on the character of
Mulray,
Hollis Mulray. And being and then getting involved in the gets him into like this kind of deep well of corruption and scandal and kind of all the messy bits of humanity. And it was really interesting because when I was watching it again, I was starting little things were starting to click. It's like, oh, okay. And then like the next scene's like, oh, okay. And then it's like, I was like, oh, okay. And then it started like, okay. I think I'm starting to get why this person might have said that Chinatown is better than Godfather.
It's considered one of the best screenplays.
Yes,
ever. It's one of the most studied screenplays, right?
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, but slowly but surely, I started like things were just like kind of like going off in my head. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it, you know. And I was like,
yeah.
And the story is what kind of got me.
Yeah,
you know, and I think
it gets crazy.
It gets crazy. It goes deep. It gets dark fast.
Yeah,
and
the more as Jake Gittes goes more and like he gets a question. It's like, okay, let's investigate this. Mm-hmm. And the when he investigates, he finds out an answer. But there's two more questions that pop up, and it continues to get darker and darker as the film goes along.
Sure.
Even to the end, because it ends in a very dark way.
It does, yeah.
I mean, eerily dark, but it's kind of
not just also theme wise, but literally because because when they shot it, they had to use like the hand lights and stuff, and you kind of get like that sense of like kind of like tabloid,
almost like an episode of Cops.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
right,
that's
right. And then you could see, and then, so you see like every person is like kind of lit up, but then like the background's like dark.
Yeah.
So kind of like reflecting like, oh my God, they're in like the heart of darkness.
Yeah.
Right now, like right in that moment.
Right. That's true. I didn't realize that until you said that.
That was a great way to put it. That it's like Cops. You're actually like kind of. You're in that moment with them.
There's like a harsh light. That's it.
Yeah, it's one harsh light. Yeah. Single source. It's like
a flashlight on you or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like you're almost like investigating with Jake.
Yeah.
At the same, and it's just kind of like that's all you have.
Yeah. Yeah. When you guys mentioned to me that we're going to compare these two movies, I was like, oh my God, it's brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I was like so excited as soon as you said it. And then I started kind of getting into it. I think I told you before, Godfather is very close to my heart.
Of course, yeah.
I watch as it should for every man.
Yeah, every man. Absolutely. Every Thanksgiving, it's been a tradition since I was maybe in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. The Friday after Thanksgiving, I watched the trilogy.
Wow.
Yeah.
The whole trilogy?
The whole trilogy.
Back to back?
I used to have parties. Mm-hmm. People stopped coming because it was way too long.
Well,
it's 517 minutes.
You should invite me. We'll be there. Do it.
Well, cool. Let's do it.
Maybe I'll take some time off. We'll do it.
I got to admit, a couple of the years I've skipped the third.
Third episode, reasonable.
Yeah. But the first two, at least, I'll watch, no matter what. And then at least once, another time a year, I'll watch one of the episodes.
Right.
Yeah. But Chinatown, I've seen a couple times, but it's been years since I saw it. And then when you mentioned it, I was like, okay, I gotta watch it again. I got excited. And it's one of those movies I didn't pay that much. I remember it being a great movie, but then I didn't remember how great it was until I saw it this time around, because I had to really, really pay attention.
Right.
And just like you were saying, I was like, holy shit, this is unraveling. The way the story flows, the velocity of it just gets faster and faster. And just like, whoa, where are we going? And then it just gets crazy. And the way they wrote it, I was like, oh, this is why it's considered one of the best screenplays, because the storytelling is incredible.
Very good.
Yeah. And I guess maybe that's one plane that we can kind of compare the two, the screenplays, the writing.
Okay.
Because Godfather was such a well-written screenplay too, right? But very different. It's based on Mario Puzo's book. He actually did the screenplay, I think, too, right?
Yeah, he worked with Coppola and...
Yeah. So which is kind of cool. He got to rework his characters, and it's a very character-driven.
It is.
Yeah, whereas Chinatown is very plot-driven.
Right. Yeah, because and I think Chinatown, the city itself becomes a character.
Yes.
You're
right, LA.
Yeah, LA becomes a character.
It is a character. It's like the main character.
Yeah, it's the main character, because it's like because the story happens all over Los Angeles. It happens like in the Valley. It happens right here where we're filming. It happens like in San Pedro. It happens at the all over.
Totally.
Yeah. So Los Angeles becomes a character within this film.
Absolutely. I think that's.
And from my perspective too, I had a little bit of a harder time, because those are all like good points. Where I guess I'm more of like a theme driven guy. As far as the theme of Chinatown is very different from The Godfather, where you have Chinatown is more of that film noir style of movie, where you're an investigative kind of sense, whereas The Godfather is more of, it's like we talked about, the human condition. Like it's definitely in a lot of ways Godfather is the contrast of Vito and Michael and how they dealt with, because they're both in similar situations, and how they deal with that situation is very, very different.
Right.
And so in a lot of ways, if going by that way is really hard to compare the two because they're very different. So I had a harder time like comparing the two, because like, man, they're both good, and I think it also depends on what what are you into as far as a film goes,
right?
What are you are you a cinephile, like where it's not just the theme, but is it like you're talking about the screenplay, the writing, the cinematography, how does that all like tie in? But like then there's the casual viewer, they're probably like, oh, what are they looking for? What are you into? And I think it's definitely it was a lot tougher of a challenge than I realized it was going to be for me.
I would have to agree with you. It seemed when you presented it, I was like, oh yeah, the two great movies around the same time. It's gonna be an easy comparison. And then when you really watch it, it's like they're very different movies. Very different movies. But I love both of them. So at what point do we compare them? Like the screenplays, I think that is one easy way to kind of compare them. How it's written, how the story flows. Godfather, like we mentioned, is more character driven. It's a development of the character. It's an unraveling of the character. But you also mentioned that, I think that's a great point, that LA is sort of the character in Chinatown. So maybe you can argue that that's a character-driven movie.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So.
And the other thing too, there are a lot of strong characters in Chinatown as well.
That's true.
Jake Gittes is a very strong character. Mrs. Mulray is a strong character, and even that's a right away is like one of the big twists, where it's like the person that first meets Jake isn't actually Mulray. It's not Mulray's wife. It was some person that was hired. She was some call girl.
Ida Sessions.
Ida Sessions. Thank you. Yes. And then there's that. Then you as you go along, you discover guys like Noah Cross. You discover, he's looking into Hollis Mulray until he dies, obviously, and then. But as he develops this relationship, you kind of see the relationship between Gittes and Mrs. Mulray, and that develops. And then once that he starts to but he still is asking questions, and then it leads into the whole thing with the person involved. And I was like the relationship with Jake and Mrs. Mulray. It develops, and you start to find because he's still asking questions, and it develops into finding out more about what's going on, but you start to dive more into her life, and you start to see was Hollis having an affair, and he starts to find out who that woman was, and it kind of branches off a little bit, so you're kind of you're asking two questions at the same time, and it's so it's a very character-driven movie as well, in a different way.
In a different way,
because you're in, like I said, because I see The Godfather as it's 1 and 2 is it really is a comparison of Vito and Michael and how they deal with the same situation that they're in, and which is a really great theme, and I love kind of seeing the contrast between those two characters, in this, it's character driven, but it's always asking questions. In Chinatown, one question leads to two more questions, and those two questions lead to another, two questions, and you're always discovering something new, and sometimes it's a twist on what you're not expecting, that because you start to the relationship between the characters, you start to feel comfortable with that character, but then all of a sudden the question's asked, and it's like, ooh, I don't feel so comfortable anymore.
Where you start in Chinatown, when you start feeling comfortable or settled with a character, all of a sudden something comes and boom, and shatters it. And then you're completely, and then you're then the shadow of suspicion is then thrown back onto that person. It's like, I don't know about you,
and that's kind of the plight of Jake, right? He gets sucked in. He didn't ask to be approached by this lady, and then all of a sudden,
to him, this was just another case from another wife who was trying to find out, if her husband was cheating on that. It was just
that's all it was.
That's all it was.
But then it just, like you said, he got drawn into the well, and then just deeper and deeper and deeper, and he can't get out.
Yeah, and one of the great lines in Chinatown was where he was just asking questions like, but just kind of seemingly innocent questions, and she's like, and she asked, "Why are you asking me this?" Like, "Oh, it's just an innocent question. There are no innocent questions with you, Jake."
That's true.
Because I think Mrs. Mulray realized that his whole profession is to ask questions and to find things out. Right. And so for him to say, "Oh, it's just an innocent question," it's like, nah, nigga.
That's true. Broader question. I didn't quite get it yet. Why Chinatown? Why? Even at the end, you remember? What was the last line?
It's like,
this is Chinatown.
It's like, forget it, Jake.
Yeah, forget it, Jake. It's
why?
China.
What does that mean?
I think that is great because it was so profound.
Yeah, I mean the movie is called Chinatown.
Well, there's a
little bit of history because Jake used to be a police officer and his beat was Chinatown.
With one of the other detectives.
Yeah, with the detective that was like kind of like that kind of.
Did I miss that? Oh, okay. Did they talk about that?
It's very
it's very like subtle. It's like very quick. Like it's like a line of dialogue. And if you don't catch it, then you
very subtle.
Gotcha.
Very subtle.
Is it also because downtown LA at the time when LA was burgeoning, it wasn't downtown because there was really no LA. It was just Chinatown. Like that's where City Hall is now. It's right at the cusp of Chinatown. Right. Do you think that's what they're kind of talking about? The corruption or the core of the city happened right there.
I think that's kind of what they're trying to go for. And it's always very subtly mentioned. Yeah. And there's always kind of this era of like, ooh, I do. It's like there's this. When they talk about Chinatown, there's a lot of disdain for it. And Jake does everything he can to stay away from it. Yeah, and you can almost kind of see because there are some Chinese characters throughout the film.
Like Mrs. like the Mulrays, like the
butlers
house,
and stuff like that.
The servants,
the butler who was actually Lo Pan and Trouble in Little China.
James Hong.
James Hong.
But there's a slight disdain for the Chinese from Jake,
even the way he treats that pool man guy, right?
Well, there's a little slight, which is kind of funny. It's like where it says saltwater bad for. He thinks that he's saying bad for glass. But he's like talking. It's like it's bad for the grass. Yeah. And Jake thinks he's talking about it's bad for glass. Which actually becomes like an important point because of the thing is his disdain and like kind of deflect thinking like whatever, I'm not going to listen to you. But actually that line was very important. That would have helped him solve some of the mystery very early on had he been not had that disdain for Chinese or Chinatown.
Right. He was almost contemptuous of the Chinese people, right? Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
So, and it's kind of, and we don't know like what he dealt with there either. That's kind of the mystery.
Yeah, because like during like during the film, there's always like this kind of allusion to a past that he had in Chinatown, like something maybe something went down, or something bad happened on his beat, right? And he was forced to keep quiet about it, or maybe that's why he even quit the force.
And it's like why he became a private detective instead.
Right.
And so, but I think it was also poignant, like that last line, like forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown.
It's Chinatown.
It's because maybe because they were they're the minorities in the city, and so kind of like the stereotype, the minorities don't talk to cops. And so even if Jake, because I think Jake really sincerely thought that they were able to get justice, and Noah Cross was going to go to jail, and this corruption with like the water was going to be brought into the sunlight, but and Mrs. Mulray would have justice, but given the surroundings where they were, it's like
none of
that's going to happen. Even the cop, Escobar, he's like, just let him go, let them all go. Because this whole scene is like radioactive. No one wants to be around like 10-foot pole.
Right.
No one wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Right. And like because that they're in Chinatown, because they're in a minority neighborhood where they have a distrust for the police, no one's going to talk to them. No one's going to tell them what's up.
That's true.
And so that last line's like, forget it. It's Chinatown.
There's sort of the Chinatown, not just LA Chinatown, but Chinatowns in general. There's a sort of not a lawlessness, but rules don't necessarily apply the same way that it does the rest of the city.
Or there's also an internal system of government.
Absolutely.
System of government. Even though like it's in Los Angeles, even though it's in the United States, there's a community law. There's a community
law.
There's a community council. There's there's
almost its own micro economy. In Chinatown as well. I think there was a study years ago. They put $1. They marked $1. Put it into, I think, New York Chinatown, and it didn't circulate out of Chinatown for years. It just stayed in Chinatown.
Exactly. Yeah.
So maybe that's kind of an allusion to that as well. The nature of a Chinatown. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely back, because this is set back in the 30s or so?
1937. Sorry, I brought notes.
Yeah. No, okay. You did more homework. You did more homework than I did. Robert gives me too much credit. I didn't write notes.
Oh man, I couldn't help myself. I told you I was excited.
Yeah. Oh. Well, that's why we had you on, because I knew you were going to get.
I know you're going to nerd out, and you're going to I didn't think you're going to bring this much notes. But
I nerded out big time. I deep dove.
So what were you? So obviously we've been talking about Chinatown. What are some of your thoughts concerning how would you compare the films? Do you what did you write down? What were your notes? What were some of your notes? Let's dive into those, because
these are just factual kind of notes that I took. I thought it was interesting that Godfather 2 and Chinatown came out in the same year. The producer of Godfather 1 is also the producer of Chinatown, Robert Evans.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, and Chinatown was nominated for Best Picture in 1975, which is the year after it was produced. It lost to Godfather 2, actually. Yeah. But Robert Evans was not the producer of Godfather 2, so he lost to his own creation in a way. It's kind of funny. And then, on all levels, it lost to Godfather 2.
Right.
Best actor and all those categories. I was kind of trying to deep dive into the time periods. 1937 is when Chinatown happened.
Right.
Godfather kind of goes back and forth, vacillates between the 1950s, I think, is the main time.
Right.
And then goes to the early 20th century when they do the flashbacks.
Right.
Especially for the Robert De Niro scenes. That's Godfather 2. And then there's a reference to World War II. Let's see, what else is there? Oh, okay, so I don't know if this is regarding comparison, but Godfather, as we were talking about, it's more of a character-driven movie. There's no clear, to me, I always kind of thought about it, the storytelling of it is a little untraditional in a sense. It is sort of Shakespearean. It's almost like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
But the classic protagonist versus antagonist is not clear.
Very, very true.
Yeah. There are bad guys. There are Barzini and Sollozzo, but they're just circumstantial. This is more about the family, and the antagonist is something you don't really see.
So also because the protagonist is the family.
Right. They could. It seems like they're both. They are the protagonist, and they are also the antagonist.
True.
Their demons are the antagonists, especially Michael's demons.
Definitely.
Yeah. And also Vito's, in a sense. Like you were mentioning earlier, his decision to adhere to the old ways, and his values, and not evolve with the changing world around him is what set everything off. This whole story, the whole destruction of the family happened because of that small decision.
That was an inciting incident.
Yeah. And if he had just gone with it, maybe they would have been...
We wouldn't have had a movie.
They would have been the most powerful family of the five. But that didn't happen because he was adhering to his own ways. And that kind of reflects his own demons, if you want to call it. Maybe not a demon, but that's the antagonist. That's...
Maybe a stubbornness?
A stubbornness, yeah. which until that point is what got him there,
Right.
Yeah, that's what made him so powerful. But that one small decision just set off everything. And it actually, it changed Michael. Michael was a very stubborn guy too. He was set in his ways, almost looking down on his family, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Almost had a disdain for his family and their ways. And he kind of went the extreme opposite. Became a war hero, joined the military against everyone's wishes except his father's. Went to Ivy League schools, right?
Yeah.
Did they say where? Did Harvard?
No.
Or?
Well, yeah. The thing was, I think the flashback in 2 was he was going to college, and then like the war happened, and then he enlisted.
That's right.
And then and like his brother Sonny wasn't having it, even though he got the blessing from his dad.
Yeah. And that's the very last scene, right? The flashback scene at the dinner table for they're getting ready for Vito's birthday. And that's when we find out his birthday is December 7th, right? Because they talk about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
How dare they bomb us on Dad's birthday?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And he's such a different from the first scene in Godfather when we first see Michael talking to Kay at the wedding to the closing scene. Completely different people.
character. Yeah.
The evolution
there was a softness, there was an openness to him, but as soon as he started getting into the family business, just darkness started to consume him.
Yeah.
And that was a symbol, kind of like at the start, like you're saying, he's very open, very almost like a bright, optimistic young guy.
Yeah.
And then you see at the end where it's like he's very closed off, symbolized by the closed door.
Yes.
At the end.
Yeah. When
or like the minion, the minion is like goes like he's like Kay sees him and like he's getting like the kiss, from the underling, right? And then the other underling goes and like slowly closes it.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Like, and he was closed off forever at that point.
Yep, and closed off Kay forever. Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts also on were there things that you from both movies? What were things that you obviously we've been talking about stuff that we like. Was there anything you don't like from either of the movies?
That I don't like? Interesting. I love The Godfather as a whole, so that's I don't have an answer to that.
I don't. I think that's a tougher question than what you do like.
Yeah, I thought Chinatown was great, especially this last time I saw it. I was like, wow, this is great. That I don't like, I can't say that I can think of anything right now. I mean, obviously, we would try to watch it with a critical eye. That I didn't like about Chinatown. No, I can't think of anything right now. How about you guys?
I honestly couldn't because the first time we watched this for our weekly live stream podcast, Nocturnal Transmissions, and I was just like, I was so impressed with the movie, more not so much as this time because I was watching it more critically, but just the technical side of it, just like how it was shot and how it could stand up to any movie that was made today.
Absolutely. You're talking about Chinatown.
Yeah, Chinatown. Just like everything is, if you weren't looking that closely, you could easily confuse this for a movie that came out today. Yeah. And so that's one of the things. So I can't say there was much that I did not like about Chinatown.
Yeah, I can't say that.
I also don't really have anything negative to say about the movies. I guess if you're looking for a movie that ends on like a happily ever after kind of moment, neither of these movies are for you.
No. Yeah.
And I think with the way that these movies end, they end on a more like kind of a maybe realistic note because sometimes I think where Chinatown might be disappointing for some people is like you went through this whole investigation with Jake. I mean, and you're like, oh, we got him. We got all the evidence. We have all. We're and it's everything's kind of culminating at the end. Yeah, and then it all falls apart, and that's actually kind of how a lot of like real life police work happens. Where it's like we got this guy dead to rights, but then no one wants to listen, and all hell breaks loose,
and the bad guy just walks away
and gets what they want. Even which is even worse. It's like and everyone's all right there at the end, and it just falls apart. Right. And you almost feel like after watching Chinatown, especially even the second time, it's like. I was just like blown away. It's like, this is a terrible. I mean, it's a great ending, but it's also like your heart breaks because like, man, we did all this work and it's just it all blew up in our face.
It was funny because Jake is kind of like the hunting dog, and the hunters are the cops, and then Noah Cross, he's kind of like the prey, and Jake essentially brings the prey to the hunter, but then nothing happens.
Right.
And it's like, and you kind of feel like this, like kind of this sense of like injustice. Like, oh, wow, how is that funny? Like he brought the bad guy. Yeah, he brought the bad guy to the good guys. Like, what's going on?
There,
it's right there.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it just, it's, justice is not done.
Right.
And it's just, you can't help but get that goat up. And interesting enough, Chinatown was supposed to end on a happy note. Like Noah Cross was supposed to get go to jail and
I heard about that. Yeah, that was original screenplay.
That was original screenplay.
Yeah, Robert Towne. That's how he originally wrote it, and then Polanski wanted to change it, right?
Yeah.
I think that was a good decision though by Polanski to do that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think the thing is as satisfying as it might have been for it to end that way.
Yeah.
I think it makes the movie a little bit better, more realistic that it didn't end that way.
Or, we might not be talking about it now if it ended, on a happy note.
Right. It would have been like it's a good movie, but like it's kind of more of a ho-hum type of film.
Yeah. And if you look at it from the broader macro perspective, this is almost a historical drama. It's a story of how LA was created through the water.
Exactly.
And if the bad guy being the character who represents sort of William Mulholland is gone, then maybe LA wouldn't be here. So that wouldn't make sense either.
Right.
And it's sort of, and it's kind of cynical to say, but in both movies, who triumphs is darkness and evil is what ultimately triumphs.
That's right.
That's ultimately what gets the best of Michael. And he was fighting his whole life, and ultimately he becomes the dark. The darkness comes upon him. And, at the end of Chinatown, darkness prevails and the city is built, and people suffer. Many people suffered. All the farmers, all the main characters, and that's the cost of success, I guess, in a way.
Damn.
Yeah, it's
and power.
So you hear that, folks?
Yeah.
Shoot for the middle.
Don't aim high.
Yeah, don't aim high. Aim just for the middle.
Yeah.
But I think with like how both those films they do end on a very dark note.
Yeah.
I think that's what gets us talking about them because we're left as viewers as we invest ourselves in these characters, but we're also at the very end left unsatisfied because I think our hearts want a good ending.
Yeah.
It's like, we can wrap a bow on that, we can tie it off, and then it's like it's kind of something in our bank that maybe we'll think about every once in a while.
Right.
But because it's left on such a dark note, we're unsatisfied, and so we become like we're trying to scratch more, like to try to like dig more out of it.
We struggle with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what life is, right? And maybe that's what makes them timeless, and that's what makes them classics.
Exactly.
Because we can always go back to it. And we can't. It's like a puzzle you want to figure out over and over again.
Or it's like the unfinished puzzle, and every year you kind of find like this new piece, but then another piece kind of like disappears, and then
that's the thing about Godfather, all the trilogy. Every time I watch it, I see something new, and I've watched it like 27 times.
I think collectively at this table we can say we've watched it 100 times.
100 times, yeah.
I would say that, yeah,
easily. And every time it's like, oh, I didn't realize that. Right. Oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't see that angle.
And I think too, what's also great because we're all three different people, and then like you'll notice something that I've like, whoa, that's, and then now I want to go back. It's like, now I need to watch it again and see what the heck Eric's talking about, or I need to see what Andy saw.
Right.
And we're almost watching the movie through a whole new perspective by talking about it.
That's true. Yeah.
And that's the great part I think about having discussions like this, because you see something and like I didn't see that in Chinatown, and now that I look I kind of go back into like my memory bank and it's like I didn't see that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And maybe we can talk about the cinematography. You were kind of touching on that before. I mean, Gordon Willis I think was the cinematographer for Godfather. and the way he just shot everything, how dark it was, but it was almost like a Caravaggio painting, like an Italian Renaissance painting, you know. And I thought that was very powerful, how he used light on the characters to reveal and to hide things, and how Michael's character got darker and darker. We see him, we're introduced to him when he's sitting out in the sun,
bright.
Like,
at the wedding, he's like, he's wearing his uniform.
Oh yeah.
He's
skin is milky white.
Yeah,
and
he's like the embodiment of like goodness and virtue. Just like the semiotics of it. Like he's wearing a uniform.
Yes, he's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
Yeah. He was, just defined success. I mean, symbolize, success in America. And then just the darkness comes, and all the other characters are already in the dark. Right.
Like the meetings that the Godfather has in his office. It wasn't like he had the windows, open, not like, it was like all darkness.
Yeah. It was just one light. Like an overhead light. Eyes were dark. Yeah. I thought that was so powerful. And I guess comparing to Chinatown, how did you guys feel about the cinematography in Chinatown? It's very different.
It was very different. It was very, I dare say, contemporary.
Yeah.
In terms of like how they frame things and so not a whole lot to glean from just the kind of surroundings or the cinematography or how things were framed.
Yeah.
I was going to make a point. I hate it when that happens.
Do you think it kind of adheres to the old film noir style of like 30s and 40s, or maybe even Hitchcockian stuff?
A little, yeah. Well, in terms of like a Hitchcock, like some, it did kind of give me flashes of like North by Northwest or Rear Window.
Rear Window. I thought of Rear Window when I was watching. Yeah.
But it was still in pretty. Even though like the lighting in like Hitchcock's movies, they're when he started filming in color, a lot of it was like very flat, kind of like kind of like studio. But even though in Chinatown it was pretty flat lighting, I think the story was what gave it depth.
Yeah.
And so I'm like on these thought paths, and then I just like blank. It's like,
there's so much to talk about.
I know so much to talk about. Like it's like I want to talk about this, but then I want to talk about that. It's like, where do I start?
Then your brain fizzles out.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, it's like it just seizes up. Like, oh crap! It's like, just stop talking. Yeah, I really like Chinatown. Like especially like this second time, like watching it.
Yeah.
Just again, like as I was mentioning before, it's like all the little things and that made me, kind of like, sit up and take notice. It's like, oh, and like get kind of excited about it. But I definitely think that it does fit in like the noir genre. And I did look up what noir even meant. It's like in terms of this context, and it's usually a story, with a crime element that is rooted within cynicism and has an element of fatalism.
Right.
And I think this it perfectly encapsulates the noir genre.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of like films like like Maltese Falcon and stuff. Like when I watch Chinatown, it's kind of like recapturing that type of style of movie.
Speaking of which, didn't John Huston direct Maltese Falcon?
I don't remember.
Who plays Noah Cross?
Oh, that's right.
I think did.
I think it is.
I think it is.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny that you mentioned that. I could be wrong.
Andy's looking it up now. Because now it's
IMDb. But yeah, going kind of maybe okay. I know we're jumping around, but I want to kind of go back to what Andy said earlier about LA being a character, which it definitely is. And in a sense, it kind of reminds me of kind of like Ray Bradbury.
Yeah, like Raymond Chandler.
Yeah, Raymond Chandler. And that's all kind of, well, Raymond Chandler especially is noir. It's the origins of noir in a sense. Exactly. But even like Ray Bradbury stuff is kind of about Martians and, outer space type stuff and kind of colonizing another planet. But that's exactly what LA is. It was uninhabitable. There was no natural water.
It was a desert.
It's a desert. You can't live there.
Right.
But people want to colonize it. And whatever it took to make it happen. Doesn't matter who you kill. Doesn't matter who you hurt.
Right. Doesn't matter
it could be your own daughter. Who you cheated. We're going to make it happen. And that's kind of what LA is. And that in that sense, it is that character that's being colonized, almost raped in a sense. Kind of like how Evelyn Mulray was not completely raped, but she said it wasn't rape.
Right.
But it was
like at that point, it's like where like the line just disappears.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So what Noah Cross is doing to LA, he did the same thing to his daughter. Yeah. It's like he colonized her mind in a sense.
Right.
And manipulated to believe that she's, that she has to give up.
Yeah.
And that's what the land LA, just give up. All right, you guys just build whatever you want.
Right. Yeah.
That's see now that's exactly what I'm talking about. Now I need to go back and like rewatch that and thinking about that. It's like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Oh damn.
Oh, another little interesting thing that I just remembered, that Evelyn talked about her, her writing. She still wrote, and then when Jake went to go see Cross, he was on his like ranch or whatever, and like there were horses.
Yeah.
And so that that might have been a way, or that I think that was a little kind of foreshadowing of their connection.
Oh.
Yeah, because before when I first watched it, I didn't even think to connect Cross and Evelyn.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, so now that you mentioned that, and and maybe like the writing was, they were, maybe that's when he would supposedly rape her.
Yeah.
So it's like this sick kind of like connection that they have.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Well, and that's what, and see, like movies like this is what I love about them, because and we were talking a little bit before we all started filming and stuff about how, a lot of some of these movies that we all kind of love, there's a lot of nuance in there. You could really go in a bunch of different directions and really start to really analyze them. You can analyze one character, you can analyze a theme, you can analyze like what they were trying to do with how they filmed it and how they framed it, and that's what's great about it. And I think that's why these movies last the test of time, because it's not just like point A to point B to point C, here's the end, bada bing, bada boom. And sometimes those movies are fine too. Trust me, there's a bunch of movies that I like that are just like kind of like, from point A to point Z, and we're all good to go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always make sense, but hey, you know what? It's still great.
Yeah.
But these are the type of movies that it's like it really like tugs at you. It tugs at your brain to like, man, what are they doing? And like I said, every time that you said we've all watched it probably about 100 times together, and we're still finding new things that we're like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't see that the last time.
Yeah.
And I think this is why those movies have lasted so long, like why we're still talking about them 40, 50 years later.
I agree. We're doing podcasts about them.
I know.
Yeah.
Geez.
Yeah. And we're so excited.
I know. I was.
What a bunch of nerds we are.
I have
fully
been.
embrace it.
I have been looking forward to this all week.
Yes.
I was so excited. I watched. I watched them again this week, but I've been watching them for a couple times, like over the past, since we had this scheduled out. I was like, all right, well let's watch it a couple times. Let's see how it. But I think this is the first time I watched it like back to back, because I've always seen them in separate viewings, split apart by other movies. Yeah. But seeing them back to back, and it's like there's some stuff that compares, and there's a lot that doesn't compare. But it's really, I'll be honest, I had a hard time really, saying, do I think one's better than the other?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know. So, can I go back to the very beginning? You said it was not a question, but a declarative statement.
So
someone said.
So the
one was better.
So the person that made this statement is a guy that we watched, Steven Crowder, who I think he's a political commentator, but he does some other stuff too. Okay. But his statement was that Chinatown is better than The Godfather. That's his opinion. Okay. That was the statement that he made.
What are some points that he made that stood out?
He definitely mentioned story.
Okay.
Better story.
Yeah.
Better story.
I think he was kind of more of like the screenplay driven, because it is more of like you're constantly on the go in Chinatown.
Yeah.
And I think that I could see where some people would like that over The Godfather. Yeah. So that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so in his mind, I think that he feels that Chinatown is better, and I think there's certain points of what he likes in movies that he sees as better than The Godfather, and initially what I think was interesting about it, and what got Andy and I thinking about doing something like this, is that because immediately you're thinking, it's like, you're crazy, like who would say something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, why don't we give it a chance? Because so I didn't pose it as a declarative statement, because I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but it's like
on the fence.
And now,
it's worth exploring.
Yeah, but I felt it was definitely worth exploring.
Absolutely.
And because we haven't done Godfather for the Nocturnal Transmissions movie reviews, but we did do Chinatown.
Yeah.
And we did review Chinatown. But I think I had a tougher decision than I thought of. But I'm going to pose a question to you, Eric, and to you as well, Andy. But why do you think it is that The Godfather seems to be the more iconic film in Americana? Why do you think that's because there's constantly a ton of the references to it. Mm-hmm. I was telling you before we even started filming that I think today, had you never seen The Godfather, you could quote a ton of lines from The Godfather, and you know The Godfather before you even watch it. Yeah. Why is that over Chinatown? Why do you think that is?
I think, in a way, Godfather, it's sort of the achievement. It embodies the American dream, and there's a kind of a cool factor to it that everyone sort of aspires to, especially guys. I think it speaks to guys a little more, because there is that element of everyone kind of wants to be a gangster, and not a gangster, right? Like in
gangster
the traditional sense, but a gangster mentality. Someone who is respected, someone who has the power, someone
feared
who
and
achieves,
respected,
someone who comes from nothing, absolutely nothing, with no family, and builds an empire. And that's kind of the American dream, and I think that's why it speaks to a lot of people. And it's a broad stroke too. I think Chinatown is different in that it's kind of granular, kind of microscopic picture of, the same thing in a sense, but it's a little darker. And I think in Godfather, like we were saying earlier, it's unclear. I mean, it's clear that these are bad people in the traditional sense. But if you really look at them, they're actually really good. Vito's a good guy. He's noble. He has very strong character, strong family values.
Yes.
And these are all things that people aspire to. And people in society who may have been deemed good and not bad people may not come close to any of those qualities.
Right.
So I think in a sense, we all aspire or wish to be like Vito. And I think we also all have a bit of Michael in us, in a sense, where, like you said, they're very different.
Right.
And Michael is very different from Vito, because Michael turns out to be very selfish. He turns out to be seeking power for the sake of power. Whereas Vito, he understood the nature of power and how it could benefit people around him, his family and then his community. Whereas Michael was just all about him. And if anyone gets in his way, he's going to kill them. And he ends up killing everybody.
Yeah.
And I think those two, the dichotomy of that is all in all of us, in a sense. We have a Michael and we have a Vito. Like, we want to be a Vito, in a sense. And I think that's what kind of speaks to, at least to me.
I was thinking, like, with what you're saying too, is because the whole Godfather trilogy is really that comparison of Vito and Michael, and they're really two sides of the same coin. Where is because they both have power, and Vito, is like it's more he does it more to protect and benefit those around him, whereas Michael is in it more for himself. Although he fools himself into like thinking he's trying to do it to make everyone else around him better, but it really is about him. And whereas and I think Andy and I have talked about this, where you see where Vito is like, when he does end up passing, he's with family that cares about him. Like he's with his fooling around with his grandson, and like it's kind of like he doesn't really die in anguish. Whereas because of Michael's choices, he ends up his lust for power ends up killing those that he cares about the most, and then he ends up in solitude and dies alone. You're right. But I think what you're all saying is that that's why it does speak to us, because it's like that we could really go in both directions. It doesn't. We think that we are the Vito in the world, and we want those things. Right. But a lot of times, like we're fighting the Michael in us and the selfishness. And we could go kind of either down that road, and it's the struggle that we have as just man, as mankind. It's like we're it's tough. It's tough. I think that's what it speaks to. Yeah. And Michael, his lust for power, he stopped at nothing. Right. I mean, in a sense, he killed his own family. Right. Whereas Vito, the power is taken away from him because he had limits. The Sollozzo deal. Yeah. That's a line he's not going to cross. I don't want to deal with the drugs. I can't do a brand. And because he did have limits, it ultimately became his downfall in a sense. But you're right too. Like maybe it's not a downfall. He didn't die alone. He lost his son, one of his sons. But he did, like you said, he didn't die in anguish. He died a very successful and very respected man. Whereas Michael, jumping ahead to 3, he dies alone, all by himself. All by himself. So, Andy, what do you think? What do you think makes the Godfather, more iconic than like Chinatown? Because, like I said, I don't think Chinatown gets, it's not really referenced. It's respected as a movie, but like it's not really like something you would see. I think just really quickly, I think the only quotable line from that movie is it's Chinatown. And there's been plays on that. I think just thinking about it, Simpsons. Well, Simpsons right away. Simpsons, and then I think there's all been kind of parodies and also kind of homages to it. I think there's like a episode of CSI where it takes place like something to do with actors, and then one of the characters, like the murderer basically gets away, and then the lead CSI he's like oh, I'm gonna get her, and then like the cop is like, hey, forget it, it's Burbank. That's funny. And there's Burbank's a whole different world. Yeah, Burbank's it really is. Even the cops are different there. Yeah, it might be an 818 area code, but it's not the Valley. There's also a great game on PS3 called LA Noire that kind of that embodies that Chinatown style of things too. Okay. And the way it ends is kind of that it leaves you unsatisfied as well. It's a great game. But yeah, continue, Andy. I think the reason why Godfather, is so iconic or resonates more because it's also philosophy. It's philosophy. It's a set of rules of how to live your life. It's like how do you acquire power? How do you make moves against your enemy? And so that way it's more able to be digested and incorporated into all facets of life. Especially for men, because men love. I think we're test case. We love this movie. Absolutely. And there's not one part of that movie that hasn't influenced like how we live our lives in some form or another. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think philosophy is what makes this. What makes Godfather so iconic, so memorable, so beloved.
I agree with you 100% on that. In a way, it's like, at the sake of sounding sacrilege, it is almost like the Bible too, in the sense that you go back to the Bible for teachings. If you have questions, if you have struggles.
Right.
Sometimes I watch Godfather and be like, dude, I'm having a business struggle. I don't know how do I deal with this client? And it's like, oh, okay, that's what.
But it's interesting because like it's not a new Godfather is not a new story. It's it's about a good king. It's about a tyrannical king, and I think
it's a classic story.
It's a classic story.
Yeah,
and I think the reason why Vito is able to be a good king is because he's lived under tyrannical or evil kings his entire life, even from back in like when he was in Sicily. Yeah. Like his father and his brother were killed by like the local don.
Right, his mother was killed in front of him.
His mother was killed in front of him by that same don, and then he goes and he moves in this other place, and then there's another evil king, which like Don. I forget his name, but yeah, he lives under that evil king.
Ciccio.
Don Paciccio.
Yeah.
And
you're right.
And so since he knows what it's like to live under an evil king, he decides to take upon himself to be rid of that king and become the benevolent king.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
I actually didn't. I love this. See,
yeah, Well, and that's where Michael didn't have that. Like he always grew up under the benevolent king, and then he saw that like the benevolence was the downfall of him.
Right.
And so I had to become the cruel man.
Right.
And I had to become the cruel evil king.
Yeah.
To keep our family in power.
Right.
But even like the lessons that they became, like you were saying that Michael was all about himself and he was very selfish, because even in that, after he got roughed up by the police chief and he wanted to, take him down, and then Sonny was like, hey man, you're making this personal, and he's like, and he kind of tried to justify himself, like, hey, this isn't personal, this is all business, this is a corrupt police chief and who's hurting people, but really it's benefiting him. It's selfish.
It is selfish, and it is emotional in a sense.
It's emotional.
His pivotal moment when he walks away, turns his back on his uniform, his good boy lifestyle, when he decides he's going to get involved in the business, it comes from emotion, his anger that his father almost died. And in that sense, that's why it is selfish. It is dark.
Yeah, and like all of the lessons that that might have been passed on to him by his father been corrupted, because there's like that mirror scene, when he meets with Salazzo in like the restaurant, and he kills them both. It kind of mirrors Vito's taking down of Don Fabrizzi.
Oh yeah,
in the hallway.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so again, Michael is the unbridled, adulterated, unadulterated lust for power.
Yeah.
Right,
and it's a corrupt, and like he corrupts almost the lessons that he got from his father.
Well, and even then, like you look at those two instances, and like the reason that Vito goes that direction is because he doesn't like the corruption that is like the people are hurting, and that's his motivation. The people around him that he cares about the most are being hurt by this guy. I'm going to take him out so that they are protected. Whereas Michael's really doing it out of like revenge and selfishness of his own thoughts, and it's it's.
So I just thought of a question now. Do you think Michael and Noah Cross are similar?
How so? Like,
how so? In their lust for power, their path to achievement, how they just stop at nothing, and family, in a sense, is second.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good thought. I didn't think
nothing
of
gets
that.
in the way of Noah.
True.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
He'll trample anybody that's in his way, and Michael is similar.
That's actually very true, because Noah Cross, he killed not only he killed his son-in-law, and
which used to be his business partner.
Business partner.
Yeah.
And when it was like his physical lust, he used his own daughter in a sense, and it was just more of like getting what he could get, like when he wanted it.
Right.
That's actually not a bad comparison. Actually, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
That kind of is similar.
Yeah, that tracks. That tracks.
Noah and Vito you can't compare. They're very different.
Yeah.
They're both very powerful, but very different men, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Noah and Michael,
very similar.
Very similar. Huh. Manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
Almost heartless in a sense.
Mm.
Yeah. Very heartless.
Yeah, very cold and calculating.
Right.
Whereas Vito was calculating, but he wasn't cold.
No.
He was cunning, but he wasn't heartless.
Right.
He only hurt the people that he felt like were abusing their position. And when he did like exercise power, it was more to help the people that he cared about the most. It wasn't that he didn't exercise the power out of just because he had power. It was more like,
I mean, in case in point, the story of who's that singer in the movie?
Johnny Fontaine.
Johnny Fontaine, and like this, and him and
the director.
The enforcer guy,
Luca Brasi.
Yeah, they go to the band conductor and like make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah.
Again, that wasn't, and it was because like the conductor was holding Johnny Fontaine to this really strict contract.
Yes.
Then that wouldn't allow him to pursue his own interests or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he and that's an example of Vito Corleone exercising his power when he sees that someone is abusing their own power. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now going back to exactly what you're saying about the good king and how he saw the evil kings growing up. Mm-hmm. Those evil kings is the result. Are examples of the result of unbridled power, unbridled lust for power, and those are all the Noah crosses. He grew up under Noah cross, so he wanted to be. He knew he had to be as powerful as Noah cross,
but better
in a good way, and understood the power of that, and knew that it had to be limited. And he had to control it, and that's where his strength of character always overcame because he knew how to control the power and direct it.
Right, because he lived under it. He felt it.
Yeah.
So he knows like to the extent that he should go himself.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they went this far. I'm just gonna go right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Oh, I didn't think we were going to go here. Oh.
Was it? There's another guy that we listen to is Owen Benjamin. He's always talking about like the logos and like the truth in things and seeing like symbols, through, it doesn't necessarily always have to be from like, biblical stories, but those stories do tend to play out in things that we do see. And, guys like Vito kind of I think have elements of that, like that truth and power and he was like I wouldn't necessarily say like a good guy, quote unquote good guy, but he's definitely like he's kind of like an anti-hero in a way, where he has the roguish behavior and he does good things. Where Michael is kind of more of like was a good guy, but was allowed himself to be succumbed by like his selfish desires and kind of succumb to evil.
Well, I think a good example of like I guess the virtue of Vito Corleone is in the second one, where they have the flashback and where Don Fabrizi like again abuses his power and his position and gets his nephew hired at the grocery store that Vito's working at, subsequently having to fire Vito. And on his way out, the store owner feels bad for him and he gets him like all these groceries like, hey, I know to let you, and he refuses. Like he even though this is just a small gesture of of love or no hard feelings or whatever, it's like, but Vito refuses it. And I think that goes to the character that he's not, even though he could have taken those groceries.
I think though, because I've thought about that scene. I thought about every scene multiple times. But my last conclusion of that scene was Vito. Yeah, I mean, he was trying to be good and kind and whatever, respectful. But I think it was also because he's always calculating. He's always 7 steps ahead of everyone else. He understood that it's more powerful to have someone feel like they owe you something and have them, and you can come back to them for a favor rather than accepting a small, simple gift and completing that exchange. By refusing that, the grocery owner will Abruzzo, whatever his name is, will continue to feel bad and actually feel even more grateful towards him. So when Vito needs something, maybe a couple years down the line, he can come to and say, "Hey, I need this," and he'll be like, "Okay, absolutely, I'll do anything for you."
Actually,
and you see that right.
Makes more sense.
You leave that open,
and you see that right in the first scene of the Godfather 1.
Right.
Yeah,
is because it's like, there will come a time when I call upon you for a favor.
And that time might never come, but
that's power.
Yeah.
When you make people feel like they owe you and they love you at the same time, that's power.
Right.
Yeah. Because you can get them to do something for you and be happy about it.
Right. Oh, God damn.
That's how he built his power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's right.
It's like, man.
Ooh, baby.
This doesn't apply to our comparison, but I always wanted to talk about this scene, kind of in that same time period in Godfather 2, when before Vito kills Don Fanucci. You remember when Don Fanucci forces Vito and Tessio and Clemenza to pay up because they were selling the dresses or stealing the dresses, and Vito said, his two buddies are freaking out. We got to get him money. We got to pay Fanucci. He says, "Trust me, just give me $50 each. I'll take care of it." He's like, "No, we owe him $300."
Right. Say, he'll take.
I'll take care of it. I'll make sure he takes it. And then it's under the hat, and Fanucci knows it's way less than what he's owed, but he's okay with it. And I always wonder, what is going on there? Why is he okay with it? I mean, he says, you're showing lots of balls by doing this. But I thought more about it. I think it is showing lots of balls, but it's also showing, I think what's not said is that Vito is saying he's taking his cut. And this is business. And I'm going to do business with you, but I'm the one who collected from my friend. So I'm going to take my cut before you get your cut. And in that sense, that's why Fanucci respects me. He's like, oh, this guy knows how to do business.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's getting... So it's like, I'm giving you less, not because they're paying less. He doesn't know how much his friends gave him. He's saying, I'm going to give you what your share. I took my share out of this. That's why there's only 100 here. I took my share. So in that sense, this guy's a businessman. And I think that's why Fanucci respects him. More so than, this guy just has balls. It's like, this guy's smart. And I think Fanucci respects him, but also realize he's scared of him too. It's like, dude, this kid is smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Oh man, now I got to watch Godfather 2 again. Like, it's only been a few months since I've seen it, so
yeah, we got to go back and watch these movies again.
Yeah.
We'll do the same podcast again.
Yeah.
It'll be a way different podcast.
So I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can really answer the question. Do you think would you hold one in higher regard than the other? Do you think one's better than the other?
Oh, it's so hard to say because Godfather is so dear to my heart.
Right.
Same.
I guess it depends on what plane we compare them. Is it screenplay to screenplay?
Right. I mean,
story to story, character to character.
Yeah, because thus far we've really only been comparing, not even comparing. We're just talking about really cool scenes or little insights that we picked up on, but we haven't pit them against each other yet.
Yeah.
And I'll say for myself, and this is definitely a cop out at this point, but I think it really depends on what you're looking for in a film.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking more for that kind of character philosophical side of things, and you like duality, The Godfather is really up your alley. If you're looking more for you like that noir film style, you kind of like the gritty detective, asking the tough questions and going after, and kind of, seeing where those questions lead, then Chinatown's definitely your movie.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a movie that doesn't give you really a satisfying ending, both movies are great. It's and if you're looking for, great stories, I mean, they're both great stories. If you're looking more for you're looking for something that speaks to you as a person more, I would say The Godfather does that because, as we just talked about, it's more of like it does talk about the human condition, and there's that like good versus evil, and goodish versus evil, and then Chinatown is if you like kind of the gritty guy going after corruption, then Chinatown is really your movie.
Yeah.
And I was telling you even before we started filming, it's like I don't know if I can compare the two.
Yeah,
it's really hard. I love both of them. I mean, obviously, Godfather is the obvious choice.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I can't really choose. And I think it really does depend on what type of movie you're looking for.
Yeah.
If you just like film, they're both great. There's a lot to like in either one, and they're great in their both respects, like in both of their respective genres. So I don't know. I can't choose.
It's hard for me to choose. It's almost like going back to what we were saying about the lighting and the cinematography of Godfather kind of being like an Italian Renaissance painting.
Yeah,
it is. And if you look at Chinatown, if we want to make it analogous, it's almost like an Edward Hopper painting.
Yeah, that's a great way. Yeah.
Two amazing artworks, and I could be in the mood for either one.
Right.
And I respect either one immensely, but I can't compare them. It's hard to compare because they're both so great in their own respects, in their own, I guess you want to call them genre.
Right.
But yes, going back to what Andy was saying, the philosophy of Godfather, I think, is what draws me back to it constantly, continuously, and probably for the rest of my life. Every year, I'm going to watch it every single year, maybe multiple times. Chinatown, I don't know the next time I'm going to watch it.
Right.
And it's been years since I watched it this time, and I watched it because we're going to do this podcast. But I'm not saying it's a forgettable movie, but it's not something that will draw me back to watch it over and over again. It may, just to study it, but with Godfather, like we were talking about before, every time I watch it, I get something out of it. You learn something, you see something. There's some kind of small satisfaction. That's a new satisfaction every time I see it.
Definitely.
So if I had to choose between the two, I would say Godfather. But that's not because of any merits. It's a personal kind of relationship I have. Yeah, it's not saying that because Chinatown, the script is amazing, the story is amazing, the way it's told, and to think that that's almost historically accurate is even mind-boggling. Whoa, that's how we're.
Yeah, because as much as The Godfather is based on all like the crime families from back then, and I think because we all live in California, so there's for Chinatown, there's a little bit, it hits closer to home because, we all reap the benefit of that kind of like seedy kind of backroom dealing.
Yeah. Interesting fact. I just have it in my notes here. If you go down, you guys have been to City Hall, right?
Yeah.
And do you guys know where the DWP headquarters is? The Ferraro building? It's right on Hope. Yeah. If you're standing at City Hall, even if you go to the roof, Ferraro sits kind of on a hill. It goes up a little bit. It's on an incline. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I read somewhere that William Mulholland purposely built headquarters of DWP there because he wanted to always remind City Hall that DWP is looking down on them. And City Hall always has to look up to DWP because there would be no city without water. And the power really lies at DWP, not City Hall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting.
That's
and that's kind of what that movie is about.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I was just thinking about this right now, and maybe the way we can compare the two is based on the story of corruption. Because they both deal with both of these movies. Their stories deal with corruption, either the corruption of the individual or the corruption of systems. So maybe that might be an angle of attack that we can.
Okay.
Oh, that's true.
good.
Yeah. I didn't, okay.
I agree. That's
So what would you, if we're going based off of that, what would you think, Andy?
It's kind of hard to say because Godfather is more of the corruption of the individual, and somewhat of the system because even though the mafia is a separate system than the government, they sometimes overlap. Whereas in Chinatown, it's about a corrupt system, but not necessarily a corruption of an individual.
Unless we agree that LA is a character.
Oh yeah. Okay. So then it works. Then that tracks.
And there's a struggle against corruption, right? There's a resistance to the corruption in both.
Right. Okay. I guess yeah. Because even with Michael Corleone, there's there's kind of a initial kind of like almost hesitation to get into that world, even though secretly that might be what he really wants. He's just not able to say it out loud.
Right.
As opposed, and then I guess if we're classifying LA as a character, then LA isn't so much a willing participant in the corruption. It's more along for the ride. Because if the corruption doesn't happen, then LA doesn't get established.
True. Yeah.
And in the same way, if the corruption doesn't happen to Michael Corleone, he never gets to be Godfather.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think we found our point of entry here.
Yes. I like that.
And he has to find a way of finding a way.
They both just kind of succumb to the corruption.
Exactly.
And let the power take over.
Mm-hmm. So which is worse?
I think when it happens obviously it happens on a individual level every day, in a lot of ways. But when it happens to on a governmental level, on a level that high, it doesn't affect just one person. It affects a lot of people. Sometimes it's for the better, and you could argue that maybe it was for the better of the city, but in other ways, we look. Yeah, if you're, historically, when governments go corrupt, it can affect and kill hundreds of millions of people. And I think, in a way, on a governmental level, it's worse because it does affect more people. But I think it on a for us on a level, it's like we're definitely more focused on the individual, and it's like we can see ourselves like, oh, we can be so easily corrupted in a way when we even get like the slight bit of power, and if we're not ready for it. Whereas in the case of like Vito, he was trained for it. Like he realized that like he saw corrupted power, and when it's like, I am not going to be that person. And when he did get power, while he did exercise it in sometimes a very cruel manner, it was always for the betterment of the people around him.
It was a necessity for the greater good.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes on a governmental level, sometimes it is for the betterment of the greater good. But a lot of times it's not.
That's true. And in that sense, like you were saying earlier, there would be no Godfather if Michael Corleone didn't succumb to the corruption, and there'd be no city if it didn't succumb to the corruption. In that sense,
right?
Is that for the greater? I mean, it seems like, or we like to believe that what happened in Chinatown was ultimately for the greater good, because we wouldn't be living here without that.
Right?
Do you think what happened to Michael was for the greater good? Let's if Michael didn't step up to be the Don, and Vito was inevitably going to die, what would have happened to the family?
They would have faded into non-existence.
Right, because there's no air. Fredo is not capable. Sonny,
Yeah. Can you imagine Fredo as the Don?
that'd be hilarious.
I'm smart. Yeah.
I wish someone.
the way people think I'm smart.
Someone should make that movie. That would be amazing. The alternate universe if Fredo was gone.
God.
Oh my god.
All right, you guys handle things here. I'm gonna make 2 cocktail waitresses at the same time.
Him and Mo Green together.
That would be amazing. Oh man.
Oh man, I'd pay to see that movie.
Oh my god.
I would.
The greatest comedy of all time.
If there was like an Indiegogo or GoFundMe, I would definitely pitch in.
I would totally pitch in.
Someone that's
Somebody,
doing that,
please,
please.
somebody
I want to see
out
that
there.
movie. Oh my god.
Maybe we
man.
should write that.
Oh
man.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? Oh yeah, what's the question? Is what would have happened to the family?
Like, well, then the events wouldn't have happened the way they did. Sonny might have been the one in charge,
and that would have been terrible.
Awful.
Yeah, that would have been crazy.
They also would have gone into non-existence with Sonny at the head.
He was all about war.
Yeah.
Because anyone who disrespected him even the slightest is like off with his head. And again, he'd just be another.
And that was ultimately his downfall. Because you could say it was him protecting his sister, but in reality, it was him just like he felt disrespect. It was disrespecting the family. This outsider that came in that married his sister, and it's like, oh, this outsider is like, well, off with his head.
And his way of dealing with that is just
and it was kind of like the lesson that Vito gives him, after the meeting with Sollozzo is like, don't let anyone outside the family know what you're thinking.
Yes.
But it's like, everyone knows what Sonny is like.
Yeah.
And so his enemies knew the perfect way to goad him. Yeah. And to get him out in the open.
And Vito knew in that moment, oh shit, they're gonna kill me. Because they knew if Vito's out of the way, they can make a deal with Sonny.
Yeah,
Sonny showed that he's interested,
and that's actually that's probably why he that's why it ended up happening.
So the Corleone family could have gone into obscurity.
Yeah, if Michael didn't step up.
If things didn't happen the way that they did,
and just like this city would not be
right. Yeah, because one of the incidents that they cite in the movie is a reservoir collapse, which
did happen, right?
Which did happen, really. William Mulholland, he inspected this reservoir that they built out in Santa Clarita, actually, and just after giving it a passing inspection, a couple days later it burst and it killed
600 people.
600 people,
and that was the end of his career.
And I think similarly in the movie, how the DWP never used to be a government body; it used to be a private entity, and then was sold to the city. And I think similarly, that's what happened in actual LA history. Like the DWP was its own private thing, and then the city came in and took over.
Yeah.
And then,
but it still kind of functions.
Yeah, it still kind of functions as its own entity.
Yeah,
or at least a private entity. So yeah, if the dam never burst, then there would be no need for them to take over the valley.
Yeah.
Right, because they would have had plenty of water. Because one of the things is that they're trying to basically starve out the farmers by rerouting water that they were already getting. The legality is kind of ambiguous from Northern California, and they're diverting it away from the valley, and they're actually dumping metric tons worth of water every night into the ocean just to starve out people in the valley so that they can come in and buy their land on pennies on the dollar.
Right. They were creating droughts.
Yeah, droughts. They're creating scarcity.
Yeah. So they would have to sell the land.
So the farmers have to see exactly.
Yeah.
And so
I think it's 100% true. That's what happened.
That's what happened.
It's really
these were all.
Because you look at all those old pictures of the valley and all that stuff. It's all those.
It was all rural. It was all rural dirt roads.
Yeah.
Nothing. Even the bank the branch that I go to, they have which is in Chatsworth, they have pictures of old Chatsworth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like orchards, vineyards, all these old archived pictures. Yeah, it was a backwater farming town.
Yeah. It was actually also like where all the Hollywood stars used to have their second homes. It was almost like a vacation area.
Yeah.
Lucille Ball, her ranch is still there in Chatsworth. Mm-hmm. A lot of people had.
Yeah, there's a house right next door to Rydell Chevrolet on Devonshire.
Oh,
the
city took over.
The city took it over as
It's
more
a
of a
museum.
historical landmark.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they preserved it though.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's like one of the few that's left.
Have you guys been there?
No,
I haven't been there recently.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Because I know they were doing a lot of renovation on it.
Yeah, they just opened, I think, last year.
Yeah.
Have you guys? Okay, now we're getting digressing here, but quickly, have you guys been to the Valley Relics Museum?
I haven't.
No.
Oh, you guys would love it.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
There's
this guy named they reopened on Balboa and Roscoe roughly.
Okay.
It's right next to the Van Nuys Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy Tommy Gelinas, who's total badass, he started collecting basically relics, old signs from old establishments from like the 1950s and 60s that were in the valley that used to be really cool. He started collecting all that stuff and then realized, oh shit, I can show all this stuff. It could be a museum. So it originally was in a small space in Chatsworth, but then he started gaining traction and people started looking for him. And started wanting to donate all these signs and neon posters and all these basically relics of the valley, of the history of how cool the valley was. And now it's this huge museum. And
that's great.
Yeah,
I check that out.
So glad he's doing what he's doing. We should go together.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
we should do it.
Let's do it. Let's plan that.
Yeah.
So I would say like I said, it's a cop out. If you're depending on what you're looking for, both movies are great. They both deserve all the accolades that they've received.
Yes.
And if you're looking for something more a little bit like historical / fiction, Chinatown's definitely your movie. If you're looking more something for like the philosophical, human condition, Godfather's right up your alley. And if you don't give a damn and you just want to watch good movies, then go for both of them.
Why not?
Because we definitely had a shit ton of fun watching both of them and talking about them. So
absolutely, we can go on. Yeah, we can go on just easily.
So I don't think
we won't.
I can't say that I can make a declarative statement that one's better than the other, because they both tickle things in me that I love.
Yeah, they hit different parts of the palette.
Yeah,
and not one is not better than the other.
How about this? Which of the two are you most likely to see again?
I mean, that's probably Godfather.
Yeah, I had to go with that.
Yeah, same here.
Now I will watch Chinatown again, but but it's one of those.
But,
things
it's also like access because they played on TV and it's like more.
That's true.
As whereas
I had to buy Chinatown to so I can watch it again and again.
Actually, I couldn't. My Apple TV wasn't working for some reason, so actually I was in Hollywood the other day and I stopped by Me, but they had a $4.99 used copy, so I was like, all right, I'll just take that. And watch it again. but yeah, I agree. It's hard to say which is better. Yeah. You can't say.
Yeah, but I like going down this cinephile thought process with you guys.
Totally.
So fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And we might have to have you on Nocturnal at some point to do a movie review.
Anytime.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a three stream, kind of.
Dude, anytime.
So we do that live.
Yeah.
This is so fun.
Or we can do like a pre-tape if necessary.
Cool. Anytime.
All right.
Good.
Well, that's the episode, guys. It's Godfather, Chinatown. Why don't you guys talk about it in the comment section? What do you like better? I'm pretty sure we're gonna get a ton of just Godfather in there, and like what the hell is Chinatown? But I would urge you guys to watch both films and come on. We'd love to converse with you, share these ideas that we've been talking about tonight. And yeah, like I said, comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff on YouTube. And if you love movie reviews, you know what we do on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock? We do nocturnal transmissions. We do movie reviews along with a bunch of other stuff that we talk about on a weekly basis. We have at the moment, a on hiatus show called Up by Up Down. That's if you're into retro video gaming. I do that. There's a bunch of archived episodes on our channel that you can check out. And on our social, if you want to interact with us on social media, which we would love, Twitter at podcastcoj, and on Instagram we are at Circle of Jerks Podcast. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we'd love to interact with you. So comment, like, subscribe, go to the social media stuff, do it all. We're gonna interact with you. So and I hope you enjoyed the episode. And until our next episode, you have a great time.
Yeah, can I just say, I really respect what you guys are doing, and the consistency is what I really respect. Oh. And the content, you guys are always interesting, but the fact that you just do it, that's the hardest part.
Consistency is the hardest part.
Because I was vlogging before, but it's like, and I've done this, and I started doing like mukbangs, and I haven't done.
Yeah, I was watching that stuff.
I've wanted to do a podcast, but it's hard, man. It's hard to keep it up. And the fact that you guys are just doing it nonstop, so consistently.
Well, yeah, because you just have to create systems for yourself. That's like the live stream that we do every Tuesday.
Yeah.
Initially, it just started off as a way for us to, constantly, not to make the channel dead. So constantly put out content is really simple too. It's a really easy way to.
You guys figured it out. It's great. Yeah. I love it, and
it became its own thing.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
Yeah. Hey, dude, you need help? Let me know. I'll help you out.
I might be calling you. Yeah, because I would love to.
Yeah. And hey, we can do let's do like cross pollination here. Have us on. We could do a mukbang, and we.
I know.
I'm down.
You did like a movie review thing, right?
Yeah,
with your kids.
Yeah. So I was doing movie mukbang, taking scenes of. People eating in movies. I love that stuff, and then we're just recreating what they ate.
Right? It's not, and if you do it with us, and we're not children, we can do some of the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Yeah. I actually did Pulp Fiction.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
I didn't show the kids, but I said, "Hey, we're just eating hamburgers."
I'm down.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Right. Let's do it.
All right.
Cool.
Well, there we go. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe. See you next time, jerk faces.
Deuces.
What he said. Thanks, guys. Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah, this was way fun. Dude.
So fun. So much fun. Oh my god, I was so excited for this.
All right.
I know this was like a redemption from.
All right.
When you two got relegated to the corner.
Oh yeah.
That's right.